Currently, the United States thinks that all drug abusers and drug addicts are criminals and sends them to prisons rather than sending them to treatment facilities where they can get the help that they need. About 80% of people in the prison actually abuse drugs, and about half of those are actually clinically addicted to those drugs. In 2017, drugabuse.gov reported that over 70,000 people have died from a drug overdose that year. Today, I'm going to be talking about the history of incarcerating drug addicts and the negative effects it has on the addict and the economy. I'm also going to be talking about what other countries are doing to help their drug addicts. I'll also be talking about why this system needs to change within the United States and what you can do to help somebody if you know that they are abusing drugs or if you are abusing drugs yourself. Incarcerating drug addicts didn't really happen until the early 1900s when legislators believed that if they made the penalties so severe for drug abuse or possession of drugs, that it would deter people from actually using drugs. They also established a mandatory minimum sentence for drug abuse or drug possession, regardless of the person's history or personal circumstances that they were going through at their life at that point. In 1939, the Assistant Surgeon General stated that the United States treats their addicts like prisoners instead of patients, and this is still true to this day. In 1960, the Rockefeller Law was passed, imposing a 15-year minimum sentence for possession of 4 ounces of drugs on a person or more. This was equivalent to a second-degree murder charge. Incarcerating drug addicts definitely has a negative effect on the addict and the economy. About 20% of the people that are charged with drug abuse or drug possession actually receive treatment. The remaining people will end up in prison and not get the help that they need. And when they are released, it is most likely that they'll end back up in prison within 12 months of their release. And I know this to be true because I recently had a family member picked up for possession of an illegal substance. The first time he was picked up by the cops, he sat in jail for approximately 3 days and was released on a bail bond. Immediately before or once he got out, he went to his drug dealer and was using drugs right away. He didn't receive the help he needed, so that's what he went to. About 3 weeks later, he was picked up again for possession of drugs, and this time he sat in jail for about 3 weeks before getting released on parole. While he was in prison, he had to think about what he wanted to do with his life so he wouldn't end up back in there, because everyone he was talking to in jail was saying that he didn't belong there, and he knew that. So he had to figure out what he had to do to not come back here and what he had to do to change in his life to make sure he wouldn't end up in this situation again. And thankfully, he has been over 100 days sober now, and he did that all by himself and with the help of family and friends, but he didn't receive any treatment from the government at all or had the opportunity to get treatment at all. He had to do it all by himself, and he's done an amazing job and turned his life around a completely 180. Incarcerating drug addicts definitely has a negative effect on the economy. It costs a lot more to send somebody to prison rather than to send somebody to a treatment center. It roughly costs about $4,700 per year to send someone to a treatment facility, but it costs $24,000 per year to send somebody to prison. If we start sending people to treatment facilities rather than prison, then we'd be able to save some extra money and maybe place that in other programs to help out people within our country. And other countries have effectively helped drug addicts and eradicated drug abuse within their countries. For example, Iceland, they start at a very early age to influence their school-age kids not to use drugs. How they do this is by making extracurricular activities mandatory for all school-age kids. It doesn't allow the kids to have time to think about actually doing drugs or even been put in that situation because they have to worry about school and the extracurricular activity that they're in. In Canada, when somebody is charged with drug abuse or picked up for drug possession, Instead of sending them to prison or any kind of jail, they actually send them to a treatment facility right away to get them the help that they need and get down to the root cause of what is going on in their life. In other countries, they decriminalize drug abuse, and they provide a safe space for drug users to use their drugs. This isn't really ideal, I think, because it's not really getting down to their problems. It's just enabling them and providing a safe space for them to use drugs. But the U.S. does need to change its system and stop thinking drug addicts are criminals and start treating them as patients, because that's what they are. They're just people that need help, and we need to start helping them instead of putting them in a little box. They need to be heard, and we need to figure out what is going on and get them the help that they need so that they can be a productive member of society and get out of this little rut in their life. Um, if we don't change our system within the United States, drug-related crimes will only increase, and drug-related deaths will just continue to increase as well. Um, if you know somebody that is going through a rough time in their life and they are abusing drugs and you want to help them out, make sure to listen to them. Don't judge them. Treat them as a person. Don't treat them as a criminal, and get them the help that they need. And then if you know anybody, or if you're going through a situation in your life and you're abusing drugs, check yourself into a treatment facility before you get picked up by the cops for having drugs on you, because it's a lot easier to deal with a treatment facility than to deal with the court system and having a parole officer and having that just loom over your life and take control when you could have took control of your own life before the drugs did. And then also, if you can't get into a treatment facility, call the National Drug Hotline. There's many different types of them. Just call just to talk to somebody, just to get through what you're going through and maybe get the help that you need. If other countries can effectively reduce the amount of drug addicts, then I think the United States definitely has the capability to do the same. And if the U.S. is really serious about decreasing the amount of drug-related crimes, then they need to stop treating drug abuse as a crime, and they need to start treating it as an illness, and stop treating it with prison bars and security officers and parole officers, and start treating it with doctors and therapists and treatment centers so that people can get the help they need and return to their normal life. And lastly, drug addicts are just people that need help. So lend out a hand and give them the help that they need.